So we're gonna start talking just about building a team or women leading lean on a 4.3 billion healthcare project. I know some of you are familiar with that project, or some of you might be not. So we're gonna be talking about that a little bit. So let's start with the first slide, if I can move it.
And in the architecture industry for almost 20 years, and I've been on this project since April of 2021. My role on the project, I'm one of the architects of record, and I'm in charge of construction administration, which includes all of the occupied field staff.
You can use it or not.
Yeah, that's fine. So I'm Sue Bhattacharjee. I was on the project as the pre-con director from 2021 to 2024. I no longer work on this project, but I love this project. So when Michelle or the project calls, I come, right? This is one of those mind-boggling projects that you will do once in a lifetime, and you guys should all be proud that you guys are here. I did miss the LCI meeting.
We need to expand. And one way is a new building. We have a hospital building that's a 1950, and we need to, that's not seismically compliant. So we need to build a new building, as you're seeing with every healthcare system doing that throughout California with Senate Bill 1953 and 2030 fast approaching. Best way to say it, it's a big ass building. I'm just gonna say, it's about almost 1 million square feet. It's not a square, it's not a rectangle, it's not oval, it's not a circle. It's kind of, to me, it's a block 7 is what it kind of looks like. So it's very unique in its way. So when you think of how you build a lot of houses, they're very close. So a lot of the building itself, even though it's not quite 1 million square feet, is because of its shape, its site, it's very expensive to build. And it's a very unique building. No one will ever build a hospital like this again. And it's, I mean, it's beautiful, but you'll never do it again because it is expensive.
Done, right? The IFOA, the way it stands and the way it was right in the beginning, in 2020s when we first started talking about it, it's all about not following the regular, my design, your builder, you own this, you own that. It's us, right? And that's the spirit of this form of agreement or contracting methodology. So just keep that in mind, right? The collaboration, the integration, the culture, right? If I cannot go to Aaron, right? You guys know Aaron, right? I know Aaron very well because we worked on a lot of issues on the job. And if I can't go to Aaron and say, your design sucks, and he says, Sue, your budget sucks, then that is not the spirit of IFOA, right? It is like, it's my budget, it's our design. And that is the complete honest truth of this job, right? That was the main theme of the project. But remember, we are all people, right? How many times have all of us done this? We are all used to our old school nature, right? So we all come into the project and then we all get tamed to understanding how an IFOA works, right? Like, Sarah, she's with Southland, Bianca with HDR, you're with Bolt, right? Everybody in this team represents a company. But when it comes to an IFOA and we come in this meeting, we all care only about the project.
Partners, right, in this culture. And the one thing with that is that means there's 12 different cultures and we have to make one. And so your languages, your policy, your procedures of how your company functions is a little different than how we run the business of the ICDC to build this hospital. And that's where there is the shift. And you see a lot, if people haven't done an IFOA, IPD project, you're used to plan spec jobs. You have to get that out of your mind because we all take the risk together and we all take the reward together.
Traditionally for leading work, and so we want to talk a little bit about that. And we're going to kick that off with Bianca. So can you share us about what you've seen and how it worked out?
Yes. So as Sue was explaining, we've come a long way. But one of the initial stumbling points that we had as a project team in the leading process, I think, was part of our benchmarking process, because a lot of our benchmarking and data was pulled from a project that half of us didn't work on. So when I'll just say it was another theory. Um, so a lot of the team did work on that project and used numbers and figures and concepts from that project. But then when they brought it over here and said, well, in this project we did that, half of us in the room couldn't relate to what that meant. We didn't know what it meant when they said we priced this on that project or we did this on that. So as the architect who didn't work on that other project, it was a challenge to know that I'm trying to target value design to a dollar amount or a design that I don't know what it actually was. So the team was just decision making in general. When you move from a traditional hierarchy, there's naturally decision makers built into that hierarchy. And when you go into a new flat structure as an IFOA, we were finding that we were making decisions by consensus, which was not effective use of everyone's time. Another issue with consensus is that everyone had a veto power. So we had a lot of decisions that would spiral to a no. It was more challenging for us to get to a yes or a decision to move forward. So that was a struggle that we faced as a team based on just the hierarchy of, how our contract was set up.
But it was just bringing it back to making the PMT really empower what we call the pits. As pits are groups of all the increments. We have 8 increments, but really it's 5 because 2 are combined there, in there. We have, it's very confusing, there's a lot. And so anyway, we have these pit groups. And we've empowered the pilot, the co-pilot to make decisions, and we put those financially, right? So they can make decisions, and then they have to take it up to the PSG that can make up to 200,000. And our PSG is our group that deals with the everyday issues that are really going on, and the cross issues between the increments, and helping direct them and solve the problems.
And us moving forward and making progress in decisions, especially with this project in particular being such a long lead project. I mean, we started validation in 2020 and our first patient occupations 2030. That's 10 years. You're naturally going to have a lot of fluctuation of staff. So when people come in, 5 years into a project and they're evaluating all the decisions that have been made to that point, it's really important that we're all aligned in documentation and what decisions we're willing to revisit based on new information. If there's no new information, we really just have to move on, otherwise we'll spiral without making progress.
Yeah. So just if you can just start talking about, we've talked about the hard stuff a little bit of this project, but how we started to turn the ship. And I know, Michelle, you had a great influence as we moved along good things on the project. So if you can share about how you've started to influence turning the ship in the project.
When I came here, I saw a lot of talented women, but they weren't in the leadership positions they probably should be in. And so it was bringing those opportunities to them. But the one thing I did was I decided on Fridays to start having lunch with the ladies. And whether it's cultural and women is just making it a more diverse and inclusive group for us. So I'm a very big supporter of that. And so we needed that in this team.
Story. Turning the ship, okay? I'm gonna tell this because it's very close to my heart. I'm gonna tell them how you showed up on the job.
Oh.
Yes. So Michelle and I go back in 2008. I was a young field engineer. So just because the topic is women in construction, if you want to learn construction, get out in the field, period, right? You're a man, woman, doesn't matter. Go to the field, learn the business, right? That's where you learn. Do you know Michelle? He says, yes, I do. They sync up. Michelle shows up 6 months later, right? But, I have always respected her. She has always been an advocate for me. But you know what the difference is? If we were men or females, we just get shit done. That was the only thing that bonded us, right? And then beyond. So I wanna acknowledge the fact that as women in construction, and I see a lot of women here, it doesn't matter whether we are a male or a female. The idea is you're the best person for the job, right? And once I got her and I spoke to Greg, and I'm like, Greg, Michelle, you guys will do magic out here because she'll get stuff done. She's really good with HCI. Even on our jobs back then, when Oshpod was this entity that was still learning and growing, she did her magic and things happened, right? She was ideal for the job. And if you talk about turning the ship, I think that's what we did, right? I left the job. She joined on October 22nd or so, 21st. I left the project on 24th or 25th because I was supposed to go. And I left, but that was my turning the ship for the job. And like I said, if this project needs somebody like that, and that's all that matters, right? The right person for the right job.
I think her presence on the project, she was able to see a lot of what some of us women on the project were doing behind the scenes. So I tend to be a consensus builder. I will go talk to someone at their desk, try to reach an agreement, bring the next person into that conversation, and do that. But a lot of that work isn't really seen because it doesn't happen in a conference room with 25 people where you make the declaration that's what we're going to do. So what Michelle did was, I think she spotted that trait in me and kind of flagged it so that I got more recognition for what I was doing behind the scenes. And so now I do it more in the big rooms with 50 people in them. So to me, that's what supporting women brings to the table. Only women in the room. So I made the analysis that I was kind of born as a woman. So.
A room or a space is something that I definitely relate to. I'm sure a lot of people relate to in this room. When I first entered the industry, I was working for another contractor for an import company, and I was the only woman engineer at that company. So out of 4 departments, there was me and 1 woman project manager in my department, and all the other departments were all men. The only women were the admin staff. And for me to go from, being the only in that space to working on a project with, just such wonderful, talented women, both that you see on this panel and some people in the audience that I'll point out, Audrey and Aaron.
Lean and working on an IPD project actually does make a lot of difference. So I work with detailers all day. I work with Saulan, with Rosetting, and they have trust on the work that I do. And they believe on the work that I'm doing, and they support the work that we are building together. And so just, even if it's men or if it's women, as long as they trust you and they advocate for you, that makes the whole difference. And Lean for me, IPD and companies that do Lean have made a huge difference on me wanting to stay in construction or wanting to step away from construction. So it doesn't matter actually the gender, as long as you actually lift the people up and you believe in them. And I will just kudos for my organization. I know has done a great job bringing more women on board. I feel very privileged in construction because all my vertical is actually women in my company, and I think that's rare in construction. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to work for this project just because of the culture that we're building for this industry.